Oh, Elizabeth.
Yeah.
What are you doing down there, Ed?
I'm trying to shut my door.
Well. Of all the things, what next, Liz? And you don't fall after much yet. I forget who the girls were. There was 3 of us, and what we did, we had a jam jar with a candle in it, you see, made a light, and pitch dark, because of course there was a blackout, you see, during the First World War, well, and the Second, and there were lights anywhere, and we used to go out in this field here and flash these lights, and people were frightened around you. And there was a man living in the shop here, Mr. and Mrs. Langdon, kept the shop, and they had a lodger, and I think he'd been in the war, Mr. Gadsden, and he was home, and he had a gun, and do you know he brought that gun out and he was going to shoot us? Yes. We were lucky we weren't shot. And the same year the house next door was a miserable old man lived there, Mr. Lewis, and his wife of course, and kids. And we used to tie their knocker and go down the front, we'd take the cotton and around the corner by the wall, see. And one of us would knock the door and hide, and we'd pull the cotton, they couldn't open until the cotton broke. Oh dear, I can't think of it. What
Tell
else?
us about that house over the road.
Which one now?
The one that that lady died in, or that man.
Oh, it was haunted,
Yeah,
you mean?
that's
And Mrs. Mitchell's. Well, a man hung himself, you see. There's 3 stories in those houses. There's an attic. And this Mr. Gascoigne hung himself there. I can remember him well. Excuse me, coughing. And when Mrs. Mitchell lived there, she wasn't nervous at all. But she had a home help, and every time she went up in this attic, a skirt would blow up. You know, all around her.
Goes up.
And I hope they didn't see my ladders.
I was just thinking that actually.
Like heaps of ladders there. And frightened the life out of her. And she come running down, of course. Anyway, Mrs. Mitchell told me, but she didn't tell the home help, that when she was sitting there on her own in the evening, she used to hear footsteps up there. But she wasn't a bit nervous, this old lady, Mrs. Mitchell. But the home help, well, she wouldn't go up in the attic at last. She wouldn't go, because it was like a terrible cold breeze, look, used to blow her skirt up. There must have been an old man around there somewhere.
Yeah.
But anyway, I believe it was haunted, that house. Yes. And we've had murders up in Conway Road.
Really?
Yes. Now, you know where as you go down Conway Road, there's a green patch.
Yeah.
Lovely, like a, well, field almost. There used to be a big mansion there. A retired butcher lived there. But one night he was murdered. And this, of course, £2,000 was a lot of money in those days. And the £2,000 was missing. And they never found out who did it. And I went in with a couple of the other girls. I was about 14, 15, I expect, when it happened. Walls of the bedroom all spattered with blood. Terrible. Anyway, they never to this day have they found out who did it. And of course the house was demolished after a while. Southview up here. And it was a man murdered his wife. Was it or a wife murdered him? I forget. No, a man murdered his wife. He went a bit funny, like he was getting on in years, and he thought she was having an affair, but she wasn't.
Yeah.
It was all innocent. And indeed he killed her. And we've had suicides. People used to live in the shop.
Yeah.
Whetstones, the old man there, he'd committed suicide. And I've been involved with a lot of these because they used to come to me when anything was wrong.
Yeah.
And the woman next door said to me, she said, see, his wife had left him in the shop, and the shop was closed because, well, he was bankrupt really, and he was a drinker, he used to drink a lot. And Mrs. Herbert next door said to me this one, it was in January, dark days, she said, I haven't seen old Jock about here. Not that he was all that old, he was only in the 50s.
Yeah.
I haven't seen old Jock about, I wonder if he's all right. So she said, wait a minute, Aunt, she said, I'll get a chair and you can stand on it and have a look through the window, because halfway up the window was green glass.
Oh, right.
So people couldn't see in, you see. And I said, right, so I got up on this chair and had a look, and I could just see him in the corner. He was bent right over. Oh, my bum. He was bent right over like that. He had taken an overdose of drugs with the alcohol, look, finished him off. Well, that was another. Then next door down, old Mrs. James, one morning, Mr. Curtis across the road come running up, well, I come down to Mrs. James. She'd collapsed and died up in the bedroom as she was dressing herself. She was 80, mind. She had all her clothes on except her one stocking. She had that in her hand. And of course she'd fallen against the wardrobe. She was covered in blood. Well, I was seeing to her. And of course we got her onto the bed, off the floor, onto the bed. And of course I went in the bathroom and I wiped a lot of the blood off her face. But the police told me I ought not to have done it. I ought to have left it. Well, I didn't know, you see. We had up in Conway Road. Oh, we had we had an awful fight. But I've told you about this, Elizabeth. With the dog biting us. Next door but one to Iris, you know, you can go in through the gully into that house or into Iris's house. There's a gate, see, at the end of the gully. Well, this one, it was a summer's day and we had all our doors and windows open. And we sat here after dinner. I think, well, Grandpa must have been at work and Gran had died. I was here on my own anyway. And all of a sudden we heard, oh, shouting, screaming, and a little dog yapping and barking. Well, I ran out and Iris ran out. I went down our garden, up hers, through the gully gate, the both of us. And the man that lived in the house, he nearly murdered his wife. He had found some letters in her bag that she'd been carrying on with another fellow, and he'd stripped all her clothes off except her bra and her pants. He would have killed her. And he was sat down on the back doorstep and he was grey. Well, I think he was near death. He was grey. Well, we didn't know what, and the little dog was excited and barking, see, you know what little dogs are when there's anything going on. So of course we tried to get the dog off him. And tried to part them, and the dog bit both of us. And do you know, the dog ripped my summer dress from the neck right down till it was like an overall on me. Terrible. Iris had 5 bites, I only had 1. So we both had to go up to the hospital and have injections, you know. And sent for the police. We had the police up here. Well, there was ructions. Terrible. And the funny part of it was, about a couple of weeks before this happened, a letter came to our house. Mrs. Williams, these people's name was Williams, see? Yeah. Mrs. Williams, 16 Conway Road. Well, that's the number of our house, this house. Well, naturally I opened it. And as I was reading that, going on reading, I thought, this isn't for me. About, will you leave my son alone or something? And something about a motorbike. And I thought, damn, this isn't for me. Well, I didn't know what to do, so I shut it up, and when Fred came home from work, I showed it him. He said, that's Williams, next door but one. He said, she must be carrying on with somebody, and the boy's mother that she was going around with had written to the wife, you see. So I said, what shall I do with it? I throw it on the fire. He said, no, don't do that. He said, take it up, knock on the door and take it up, and tell them that you opened it, thinking it was for me, which was Mrs. Williams, 16 Conway Road.
Am I going to walk into anything?
Yeah. No, settee there, right in front of your leg. Right, now go forward.